My name is Mrinmayi Kulkarni. In this poster, I'm presenting some work from an ongoing study examining the cognitive and neural correlates of episodic memory regulation. Regulation of retrieved episodic memories may sometimes be required to maintain goal-directed behavior. The process of memory regulation has been shown to be associated with increased recruitment of cognitive control mechanisms and reduced activity in the hippocampus. Different strategies can be utilized for episodic memory control. One such strategy is retrieval suppression, that is, trying to push the retrieved memory out of your awareness. Another strategy is thought substitution, which involves actively calling to mind different information instead of the retrieved memory. Past work has shown that eye movements are sensitive to episodic memory. Memory-based viewing occurs spontaneously following cues across a range of task demands, and this memory-based viewing effect is predicted by hippocampal activity. So in the current study, we aim to firstly examine the effects of memory regulation on eye movement behavior. Secondly, we aim to replicate results from previous neuroimaging studies on memory control. And finally, we aim to examine whether eye movement behavior is associated with the representational content held active following memory cues. In order to test this, we had participants first complete an encoding phase, during which 3 famous faces and 3 tools were each paired with 36 scenes. Next, they completed a regulation and search phase while undergoing concurrent eye tracking and fMRI. Here, each trial began with the presentation of an instruction screen, and I'll tell you in a second what this instruction means. Next, one encoded scene was presented, which was followed by a delay period. After this, a search display was presented consisting of all 6 encoded objects intermixed with 6 black dots. At this point, participants were instructed to move their eyes around freely until such time as all of the dots but one disappeared. At this point, participants made a single eye movement from wherever they were on the screen to that remaining black dot. Importantly, all 6 objects were presented in the search display in all trials, but they were always task irrelevant because participants were only instructed to locate that remaining dot. In the beginning of the trial, participants could receive one of 3 instructions. Participants could be instructed to retrieve the matching object of the scene, in which case they were asked to call to mind the object that was paired with the scene and actively maintain it when the scene was presented and in the delay period following the scene cue. They could be asked to suppress the matching object, in which case they were asked to simply push the memory of the matching object out of their awareness. Finally, they could be asked to substitute the matching object with a specific object from the opposite category of the associate. So if the scene was paired with a face, they were asked to call to mind a specific tool and vice versa. Here is a subset of the eye tracking results. To examine how much objects from different categories were prioritized in viewing behavior, for each trial we identified the object in the search display that garnered the highest level of viewing and then counted in how many trials this prioritized object was either the associate or an object from the different category as the associate, separately for faces and tools in the retrieve, suppress, and substitute conditions. As you can see, the associate was the prioritized object in a majority of the trials, but only in the retrieve condition. On the other hand, we found that objects from the opposite category as the associate were prioritized in a majority of the trials in the substitute condition. Furthermore, we found that activity in the medial temporal lobe predicted the level of viewing directed to the associate. Next, we looked at how brain activity during the delay period is modulated by the instructional cue. We found that in the perirhinal cortex, activity was higher in conditions in which participants attempted to retain a specific object, that is, in the retrieve and the substitute conditions, as compared to the suppressed trials, where participants were attempting to push that retrieved associate out of awareness. In addition to interrogating medial temporal lobe structures, we were also interested in whether regulation strategies are associated with activity differences in different subregions of the prefrontal cortex, as has been reported previously. To do this, we extracted activity from a 5 mm sphere centered around coordinates reported in previous studies. Consistent with the results reported by Benoit and Anderson, we found that activity in the right dorsolateral prefrontal cortex was highest in the suppressed condition, whereas activity in the left ventrolateral prefrontal cortex was highest in the substitute condition. To conclude, in the current study, we found that eye movement behavior was sensitive to memory regulation and may index actively held representations. This was evidenced by the fact that viewing to the associate was downregulated in the suppress and substitute conditions relative to the retrieve condition. Additionally, viewing was most often directed disproportionately to an object from the opposite category as the associate for the substitute trials. Further, we found that memory regulation is associated with activity differences in the medial temporal lobe and the prefrontal cortex. Activity differences were greater in the perirhinal cortex for retrieve and substitute trials, which may reflect the retrieval and active retention of object representations in these conditions. As reported previously, we found that specific memory control strategies are associated with differential activation of the dorsolateral and ventrolateral prefrontal cortices. This dissociation may subserve the opposing task demands between direct suppression and thought substitution. Our next step will be to use representational similarity analyses to determine whether eye movement behavior during the search phase can be used to index representational content that was held active during the delay period. Thank you.